Well, hot dang, this is the brand new Boomerang Lancer aircraft. We did the unboxing of this beautiful little aircraft at Montana Jets, and that's where we received this aircraft. Very excited to put this little RC jet together. It is going to be an absolute rocket ship. So let's take a look at the beginning steps, all the equipment, the manual, and everything to put this beautiful, fully composite Boomerang Jets Lancer together. If you missed the unboxing video, I encourage you to check it out. The camera, I'll tell you right now, does not pick up this color properly. In the camera, it's going to look more red. This is fluorescent pink on this aircraft, and it is so bright, so cool. Great little sports jet. Take a look at the unboxing video. If you haven't seen it, I cover some of the quick details, but we'll get into the details more as we go through this thing. But it is ultra simple. It's going to be very light, and I've heard it's a really great flyer. So like normal with our projects, we will take a look at the equipment that's going in the project first, and that's our starting point. So this, I think, is pretty much everything. I just kind of got home from Montana Jets, laid our equipment out, but let's take a look at what we're putting in this aircraft. All right, so to maneuver and pilot and set up this aircraft, we'll be setting it up on our Jetty DS24 radio, and we will be using Jetty components along with Cortex Pro gyro. So we're going to be doing this in a very simple setup like we've done on other aircraft. So this aircraft is going to be, I'm assuming, a 1 battery setup. Now we may do 2 batteries depending on how much nose weight it needs. So that's going to be a deciding factor, but I think we are probably just going to do 1 battery. We'll see how it all works out, but that's the plan. So we're going to be using a Rex 12, which isn't pictured here, but the Rex 12 and another receiver paired with the Cortex. We have access to 18 channels. We don't need 18 ports for this aircraft, but that's how we're going to be setting it up. We're going to put a M-speed sensor in the nose of this aircraft so we can see how fast it's going to be going. Our main power is going to be taken care of with the DSM-10, and this is going to be turned on and off remotely from the radio with an R3 operating the DSM-10. Now we are putting a Zykoi X95 in this aircraft. Now the recommended turbine is a 60 or 70 or 6 or 7 kilogram, 60-70 Newton thrust turbine. If you're building one of these, you only need a 60. Why are we putting a 95 in this aircraft? Well, number one, it's the turbine that I have here in the shop that is a spare turbine. It was actually designated for the T33 over there. T33 is now kind of being bumped to next year, so we'll get another 95 for that. But that's the plan for this aircraft, is to take this 95 and put it in that little Lancer. Now, we can always turn it down, but we are also at 3,000 feet of elevation, so we do lose 15-ish% of thrust, bringing this down to about an 80-75 type scenario. So don't think I'm crazy, but it's going to be fast, but it's going to be fun. Landing gear, we're using the stock landing gear, which is JP Hobby. Now, I took these out of the box in Montana, hooked them up to the stock controller, cycled them a whole bunch of times. They work absolutely amazing. The brakes are very modular. I think that's the right word. So when I go to 50% travel on my brake slider, I get a decent amount of brakes, and full brakes, they lock up very nicely. So there's a great amount of modulation with those brakes. I'm happy with them as they sit right now. So that looks great. And so we're going to be using all of the stock hardware, the stock controller, stock hardware is there. All that stuff is what we're going to be using. Fuel tank, that's the stock fuel tank. We'll be using that and the fittings and stuff that come with it. We're going to be using a Model Aviation's Products MAP Standard UAT. Reason for the standard is we don't need high flow, so this is all normal sized fuel fittings. So that is what we're putting on this aircraft. If we were using a little bit smaller turbine, like a 60, I would go with the smaller one, which we recently installed in the Rebel Hot. Now, because we just recently built that Rebel Hot, This is a great comparison between the Rebel Hot and the Boomerang Lancer. Very similar sizes, like the wingspan on the Hot is 1.5 meters, wingspan on the Lancer 1.524 meters, so basically exactly the same thing. A little bit longer airplane, 1.7 meters, but very portable airplane. This is going to be, just based on this number right here, probably maybe a 7 kilogram airplane. Like I think it's probably going to be, just a rough guess, maybe 15 pounds. I don't know. It's going to be pretty light. It feels really light. So another quick look at the aircraft. Very cool to see the Boomerang lineup moving towards fully composite. That is a huge thing. So all of our surfaces, fuselage, stabs, rudders, everything on the aircraft is fully composite. Huge thumbs up for that. That is so cool to see. So, and the last thing I'll touch on here is the manual. Wicked instruction manual on this aircraft. Very detailed, lots of good pictures. So we've printed everything off so we can run through it with you guys while we put this aircraft together. So we'll pretty much follow the manual as it's laid out. If I jump around, that's okay, but we'll cover all the manual steps as we go through this project. So like normal, first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up a new model on our radio. We're going to get all of our radio stuff updated, ready to go, and that's kind of step number one. Now this airplane is quite simple. We've got all the surfaces, all the normal surfaces and everything, but the manual says 9 channels, 8 servos. I mean, obviously there's different ways to do things, but we'll be doing a very basic setup on this aircraft. The Zykoi has great telemetry, so that's going to be cool to see. And also the M-Speed sensor is going to give us some fun things as well too. So let's get all of our radio stuff set up and dive into this project. So we're putting 1220 from MKS. So MKS 1220 servos. These are great servos. Very, very powerful. Quite affordable as well too. So this is what we're going to be using on the large servos that it calls for. So here's a list of the required components. So we need 6 standard size servos, which we have sitting over there, 2 mini servos. So depending on what we need to fit in there, we'll probably use an MKS like 747 is probably what I'm going to use. And those mini servos are for, I think, steering and rudder. Those are the 2 surfaces that will require the smaller servos. So we'll, like I said, be using the MKS 747s, which are also a very high quality servo, very powerful for the size. So because we are basically copying our Rebel Classic setup on this aircraft, what I've done is I've gone in and duplicated my, my Rebel Classic, changed the color profile to be pink, which is perfect. And then all I'm doing is going through and resetting everything. So resetting all of our channels, but essentially the core of the aircraft is going to be very much the same. So we're just adding, resetting the sub trim back to zeros as an example, as we go through everything here. So that is essentially all that needs to happen. All right, so just to get the process started here while we work on things, I'm going to start our servos in the burning in or cycling process. So for that, we use our Jetty box. Just have a servo plugged in there, go to the servo cycle function, hit yes, number of cycles, we just do 990 because that's the max the Jetty box will do. Increase the travel distance to 500, which is the max. Increase the speed to 30, and we cycle each servo through this torture. So what this does is hopefully electronic devices fail in the first part of their life. So if these servos or any servo are going to fail or have problems, this is when we want to find out. And that is why we do this process for every servo that goes in a plane. All right, just to show you guys what we're talking about here with the servos. So here's 2 MKS 747s, and these are great. I mean, this is a phenomenal servo. Probably actually, I don't know about the strength. I think it's a little bit weaker than the 1220s, but awesome servo. So anyways, this is the steering, fits perfectly in there. And then we've got our rudder surface here, or our rudder servo mount, and that is the servo put in the rudder mount. So again, that is perfect, exactly what we're looking for. So we'll be using 2 of the 747s. All right, so we got things rocking and rolling here. First step in the manual is unpacking the Lancer and examining all the components. We've done that. We are going to get our hinging done. Now the hinging is obviously not done on the aircraft, and this is one of those things that you really want to get done because it stops you from getting anything else done. So we're going to get the hinging done first. Basically you've got your ailerons ×2, flaps ×2, horizontal stabs or elevator surfaces ×2, and your rudder ×1. So hinging is quite simple, very straightforward. It's laid out in the manual very well. So like it says here, you put a drop of oil on the pins. We're going to use high sol on each side of the pin, and basically you're using tape to hold it in place. Now the manual does talk about putting the control arm through the rudder. That is already marked with a hole right there, which is perfect, and that designates our location for our surface activation arm. All right, so we've drilled our hole with a 3.5mm bit through the indent mark, and what I'm doing here is I'm putting, I've already put some masking tape on the one side, and we're just going to soak the balsa block that's in here with some thin CA. This is a great way to reinforce the balsa blocks and harden everything up inside that, that mounting point. So just dripping some thin CA in there, letting the balsa soak it up, and then now that's full, it's not soaking up anymore, so we'll tap it out, and good to go. Now the reason you're doing this now, the instructions say to get this mount done up before you get the hinging done on the rudder surface. That's why we're doing it now. All right, so we've got our arm installed here. I used a bit of CA when I put that the threaded bolt piece through, and then some Loctite when I put my nut down. This is nice and solid now. So now what we'll do is we'll get our surfaces over here. We'll probably start off with the horizontal stabs just because they are nice and small, easy to work on. But all the pins are installed in those items, so we want to make sure we take all the pins out, make sure they move freely, put a drop of oil on each of those hinge points. All right, so hinging, quite a straightforward thing. The only thing you have to be careful of is with something like the rudder here, you want to make sure you're maximizing the amount of travel. So often the rudder, when you put this in and activate it, you'll find these pins inside the fuselage will actually pull out a little bit. So I'm going to add a little bit of spacers on the rudder, but we're going to get to that after. Elevators are only traveling 20 degrees max. So with the pins and everything nice and tight and just a little bit of a gap, we get plenty of movement. So we've put a drop of lubricant on the pin itself, and very seldom do I use the nozzles with high sol, but in this case this is a great time to be using the nozzle because you can get it right in there and control how much actually goes in the surface. So we'll put a little bit in each hole, and generally you don't need to put any on the actual hinge itself. So we'll just confirm. In this case I think we're going to put some on the hinges too. So I'm going to refill this guy up. And we'll just take an empty servo tray here, put a little bit on there so we've got something to dip into. And pop our pins in. Now our pins, obviously you're going, making sure that they're bending the proper direction. That's an important thing. So you can pre-do that by bending those pins, taking a look at them, and you can adjust them and get them nice and perpendicular to the hinge line on the surface itself. And then the point of the lubricant is when you get a little bit of excess like this, the lubricant prevents it from sealing up the hinge itself. Okay, so we've got all 3 of those installed on the horizontal stab surface. We've put them bent them and taken a look at them, and they're all perpendicular to the hinge line. So now we'll pop those guys out, and we will put some in the surface itself. And then we'll take Trusty's cousin, Trusty number 43, clean these guys up a little bit, and we'll put a little bit of high sol on the actual hinge pins itself. Just a nice little coating, not much at all. So we'll do one side, flip it over, and do the other side. Perfect, so that's ready to go. Now we can install our pins into our elevator surface. And we're going to run that quite tight, because if we take this and bend it, there we go. So we got a nice gap there. So this is how I would generally do it. Now they're calling for 20 degrees of up movement at full flaps. So I'm going to set my angle finder to 30 degrees to make sure that I can get plenty of movement there, and we are going to make sure that this surface will deflect to 30 degrees, which it does quite comfortably. So we got lots of movement there, and reset it, and that's where we're going to keep it. So what we can do now is we can tape this off just to hold it in place so we don't bump it or anything, but that is perfect. All right, so we got one of our wings done here, all of our hinging. This side here, just like the elevators, got them taped in place. Folded up a piece of tape for a spacer because we didn't need to use a little wood stick here that we used on the elevators. That would have been a little bit too thick. So just a couple folds of masking tape is all we use there. Flap, you basically jam it in as far as you can possibly get it. So that is good. The holes are nice and installed in the lower portion of the wing, so the flap actually operates beautifully. It says to get 50 degrees of flap. We can actually get a little bit more before we get touching on this, this edge, but of course that's going to be limited to our actual mechanism for operation. So before we wrap this wing up and move on to the other wing, we're going to get our fiberglass tab glued in place here. So what we're going to do is just sand this down about a third and get this glued in place. Now you do have a little bit of access from the back side, so we're going to fill this slot with glue, get that installed, and I'm probably going to take a gloved finger and make sure we've got high sol around the back side. And then one other little thing that I'm going to do here is our front anti-rotation pin, so that guy right there. I'm just going to inject that with high sol, and that'll help to stiffen that up as well. Not that that carbon rod's not enough, but I'm just thinking about that X95 going in here and trying to make a little bit of adjustments to things based on the speed. All right, so all of our hinging's done. As I showed you, we filled our anti-rotation pin with high sol. And I'm not saying you need to do these things or there'd be a reason for Boomerang to do these things, but I'm doing them because of the little bit larger size engine. So also, while I had my nozzle, just injected the entire horizontal stab carbon tube with high sol, so that's completely full of high sol now. Our rudder's installed. The rudder I've got spaced out with a little piece of wood. It's not a full-size popsicle stick, it's like a little stir stick, top and bottom. So that gives a crazy amount of rudder throw. And one piece of advice here is take a look at your control arms. These come in different sizes. So there's 3 short ones, 4 long ones. Initially I had put one of the long ones in here. It needs to be a short one, I'm assuming, because you're going to have a short one here, short one on each elevator, and then probably the 4 long ones on the wings. Also took a razor saw and cut out our cross member here. This piece is designed to come out so your tank can slide in and out. Now, one of the things I was looking at in the manual, the tank can go all the way back like that. The CG point is right here, so right behind this cross brace. So right now in that location, it's pretty much over the CG, but the airplane is designed to have this cross brace hold the tank as well too. So basically it's going to butt up against this location right there. So I'm just playing around with this for now, not permanently installing it, just wanted to see how that fit. So continuing with our gluing here, we are getting our tank glued in next. So these fittings here on the bung, you just use some red Loctite for those guys. You get them tightened down nicely, and the red Loctite seals it beautifully. And when you put this in the tank, you're just using a drop of, I use silicone oil on the O-rings, because then it doesn't affect the O-rings. No Loctite on these threads, that's for sure. And that gets threaded in, but we don't want to do that now because we've got to clean the tank out. And what we do want to do now is put our vent fitting in, which is this guy right here. So these vent fittings, we're just going to make a hole in the top of the tank, get this high-soled in place. Now we're going to go off to the side. The manual shows it off to the side. The joiner piece in the tank is right down the center, up and down on the tank. So that's why you want to do it off to the side. I think it's a better idea anyways. And we're going to put that right in that location. All right, so when we do these holes, you'll find that the Kevlar is very grainy like this. So the easiest way to clean this up that I find is do your hole, take some thin CA, put it on the Kevlar fibers, take a little bit of kicker, give that a spray. You'll see that usually kick off right away. You can see it there, it's smoking. And then we take our reamer tool from Align, and we'll just do our hole to the right size. And this also helps to get rid of the fibers as well. So it stiffens up those loose fibers, and then you're able to just chop them off with the Align tool. So that's perfect. We'll be able to thread in there, so that's good. And the little nipple here is also the same kind of thing. So we're going to put a little bit of red Loctite on this one, and we'll get this guy threaded into place like that. So depending on how far you are going to sink this down, you may need to put a groove in the vent fitting. So we're going to go a couple threads in, build up some high sol around that. So I'm not going to do a groove or anything there, but if you're going to bury this all the way down, you got to remember that you want the air to escape out of that fitting. So you may want to just take this to a saw or a Dremel and put a cut on the side there to make it work. But in our case, it should be fine. So we're going to take our Dremel and just roughen up this area so we've got some good adhesion with our high sol on the tank, and then we're going to get this piece glued into place. All right, so it's the next day. This morning I pulled all of our prep off to do our hinging, and everything worked out beautifully. The reason I popped it off this morning is because that would have been about 8 hours-ish since we did the hinging. The high sol is still not, super firm. So at that point, pull the tape off and just go pop, pop, and everything's nice and solid. So it's been 24 hours now. That stuff is all good. So everything's cured. All of our rods and everything are done. Our mounting points here are done. So that's awesome. Also was able to pick up some polycarbonate for the canopy. So this is what you want to use. You want to use polycarbonate ideally because it will stick very well to the plastic. So this is the smoke polycarbonate. So if you just put it on very thin, you'll get kind of that result that you see on the can where you can see through it, but you can keep adding this layer after layer, do really thin layers, and then you'll get the result that you want. I mean, I've blacked out canopies completely before. It's really important to wash these first with like dish soap and just get all the oils off. If you don't get the oils off, then you'll get fish eyes and stuff in the canopies. So we'll get that done here shortly. And Nez really likes her string time. Your string buddy, I know. And getting back to our other stuff here, so our tank's all solid now. Our vent is glued. That again was done yesterday. So we can get our tank finished up. And then we can also do our retracts as well too. So those are two of the last things we're going to get done here for this segment. So regarding the retracts, don't assume any retract comes Loctited from the manufacturer. I build a lot of planes and basically none of them come Loctited already from the manufacturer. So what you always want to do is you want to do the fasteners holding the actual gear together. We've got our fastener here for our nose wheel, which is what this is, and you've got your fasteners holding your actual wheel together. The mains are very much the same thing, so you've got 3 per side for the actual gear, and we won't do up the fastening bolt here on the trunnion yet because we want to check it for our toe in, but we will do our fasteners on the wheels. So just a little drop of blue Loctite. All right, so generally on a long tank like this, I would install a rigid piece of tube in the middle, which is what we're going to do. So basically this tank is going to look something like this as far as the layout goes. Now what I do on these middle tubes on something like this is just give them a light sanding and put a glob of solder on the tube itself. Now that's not doing anything to seal it. All that's doing is when you put tie wire or safety wire on here, it prevents that Tygon tube from sliding off because this is a little bit wider than the rest of the tube. So we're going to get this all made up, and we are safety wiring all of our joints. All right, so our clunk's all done up here. This comes about 1/2 inch from the end of the tank, which is perfect, and that is done and ready to install. Just rinsing out the tank. So when we did our vent line here, there's a couple chunks of crud floating around in there. So what I do is I take a bottle of isopropyl alcohol and dump half of it in there, swish it around, dump it out, dump the other half of the bottle in there, swish it around very aggressively, dump it out, and then I check and make sure that all of our crud is gone, which usually completely takes care of it. Now, if you're just putting together your first plane and it happens to be this one, this really applies for every aircraft. You need to rinse your tanks out first of all. There's going to be dust and crud in there that will plug your fuel system, and it's very important to clean that out. You want to use either fuel or rubbing alcohol. I like the alcohol because I just dump it in the garbage and it's zero issue. You don't have to worry about getting rid of it. If you use fuel, then you got to try and get rid of it somewhere. I mean, you could dump it in used oil containers and stuff, but the alcohol is just easy, cheap, it evaporates. So don't use water, though water is very difficult to get out of those tanks. You will regret that. So I think that qualifies for a tip time. That is definitely a very reused tip time here on the channel. We use it a couple times a year, and this tip time has been brought to you by trusty bent screwdriver. I know all of you guys that bought a trusty when we had them on sale, and I know you're getting tons of use out of them because I get lots of emails, so hopefully you're enjoying your trusties. All right, and we just put the bung in here. What I do when I put this in, no Loctite on this guy, just a drop of silicone oil on that O-ring. Tighten it down with your fingers. Just take a pair of channel locks and just give it a little hi-ya, not much at all, and that tank is good to test. So now what we do is we close off one of our lines with a burnt and crimped line. We pressurize this with our mouth. We let it sit for a while and we confirm that it holds pressure. All right, so we got our nose servo installed as well, and we got our mount here for our actuation arm done. I got this adjusted. I just undid the ball joint here, and we've got a piece of carbon. We're going to put carbon on all of these surfaces, and you can see how long it's cut there. So and I do glue this onto the arm as well too, so that's going to make it nice and solid. Now I don't think there's an issue with these stock settings. Again, we're just adding a little bit of reinforcement here and there just because of the excess speed we're probably going to have on this plane. So get some glue mixed up, put that on there, and thread this guy all the way down. All right, so we've got our servo setup all done here, and that is going to work out absolutely beautiful. So we use the Seacraft aluminum arms. Now I don't generally like using these guys on bigger jets because there's not a lot of support because there's such a big hollowed out area, but on something like this size, perfect for this. So all the stock hardware, 2mm stuff, all fits in there, and that MKS servo is butter. That is so good. So that is set up and done. All right, so we've got our canopy trimmed here, trimmed off about 3mm all the way around the perimeter, so it fits perfectly. Washed this in dish soap, dried it off with a brand new cloth, and we taped off the outside of the canopy. So we're going to use our smoke paint, put probably 2 very light coats on here. If you get any runs, you're definitely going to see them, so try not to get any runs on this thing. But I'm going to put 2 light coats on there. What I'm going for is I'd really like this kind of look here, so just a light, almost see-through, but dark enough that it looks like it's blacked out. Now this canopy, the pink is painted on the outside, so it's white and then pink over top. We may get some paint peeling off when we pull the tape off. That's okay, we'll deal with it after, see what we need to do. If it all stays on, awesome. If it doesn't, we'll deal with that, but not a big deal. I really, primarily as a first step here, I'm getting the inside done perfectly. All right, and there's the canopy blacked out. We've got a little bit of touch-ups to do here on the perimeter, but not too bad at all. But that is going to change the look of this airplane. So let's put the canopy on the aircraft and take a look. All right, so we'll get the canopy installed first. The paint's not completely dry yet, so just have to be careful with it. And there we go. So that looks much better. Much better. Instead of having the pinked out cockpit area, that looks really good. So the other option, I guess, if you wanted to do a cockpit is you could paint the cockpit black if you want to keep this look, but that looks perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for, nice and blacked out. It's pretty much solid black. I guess I could just use black polycarbonate paint. I always have good intentions of making this a little bit see-through, but I like the look of it when it looks like that. So that is perfection. And that wraps up video number 1 in the Boomerang Lancer Jet series. This thing's going together very well. It's quite a quick build. And if you're interested in one of these things, I encourage you to check out the links down below to Boomerang's website. Very affordable aircraft, easy to put together so far, and I know this is going to be a real hoot to fly. So I'm enjoying this process so far. Next video, we're going to hop into the wings and the surfaces. That's going to be the focus of video number 2 in the series, and I'm probably going to do 3 videos. That's going to be the equipment installation, and then we'll do engine run-ups and all that, and then of course the maiden flight. So there'll be quite a few more videos in the series. If you guys have any questions or comments, list them down below in the comment section of this video. You can also reach out to me at thelightersideofrc@gmail.com, and I check my email very regularly, so I encourage you to do that if you are interested in asking me a question. So thanks guys so much for watching. A little plug here for channel membership, our channel members. Thank you so much for your support. Channel members, they get to see the videos well before they come out on YouTube. So typically we've got about 2 weeks of videos, so 4 videos uploaded to YouTube. Channel members get full access to those videos before their official release date. So if you're interested in channel membership, it is a paid thing. There's some links down below to channel memberships. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we will see you in the next video.